Let's ask a question so old it almost feels like a joke. But stay with it. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? You've heard it before, maybe you've even laughed it off. But beneath the humor is something far more unsettling, a paradox of beginnings, of cause and effect, of origin itself. So let's sit with it, not to find an answer, but to follow the spiral it creates. On the surface it feels like a biological riddle. If every chicken comes from an egg, then the egg must have come first. But where did that egg come from? It had to be laid by a chicken. And if that chicken came from an egg, we're right back where we started. Round and round, a closed loop of life and birth with no entry point. A circle disguised as a line. It's like asking, where does the river begin, when every drop flows from another? Let's get scientific for a moment. Evolutionary biology gives us one version of the answer. It says the egg came first, because long before chickens existed, there were pre-chickens, birds that weren't quite chickens but were close, and at some point, two of these almost chickens mated, and their DNA mixed in just the right way to produce the very first true chicken. And where was that DNA combination formed? Inside an egg. So in this view the chicken is the effect, the egg was the cause. Case closed, maybe not. Because now we have to ask what made the first egg, and suddenly we're swimming backward through time, through countless species, each one laying eggs before it, until we reach something that isn't even a bird, and even that laid an egg. So maybe the question is deeper than just chickens and eggs. Maybe it's asking us something else entirely. Where does anything truly begin? In philosophy this is called the problem of the first cause. If everything has a cause, what caused the first cause? What caused the Big Bang? What came before time? If the universe began, what began that? Like the chicken and the egg, we're searching for the first domino, but every time we find one, we realize there's another behind it. It's like peeling an onion with no center, or walking toward the horizon, only to find it keeps moving away. Now consider this. Maybe we only think in straight lines because we live in time, cause, then effect, before, then after. But what if reality is circular? What if beginnings and endings are just illusions, frames we impose on a seamless loop? A chicken lays an egg, the egg becomes a chicken, the chicken lays another egg. Maybe there's no first, just movement, cycles, becoming. In Hindu philosophy, time is often seen this way, not as a line but a wheel, no starting point, just rotation. The egg is the chicken is the egg. They're not separate, they're the same process, wearing different faces. But this still leaves us with a kind of itch, doesn't it? Our minds crave order, timelines, clear beginnings. We want to say, it started here, but nature doesn't care about where we draw the line. Life is messy, blurred. Even the species line between pre-chicken and chicken isn't exact. It's gradual, subtle. There is no birthday for the first chicken, only generations of almost chickens, slowly turning into something new. So maybe the paradox only exists because we're asking the wrong kind of question. Maybe the better question is, why do we need to know what came first? Why do we resist the mystery of the loop? Take a moment, breathe into the spiral, let go of linear time, let go of cause and effect. What if beginnings don't exist? What if life is just an infinite unfolding, with no first and no final? In that case, the chicken and the egg aren't opposites. They're partners in an eternal dance, each one giving rise to the other. Not a riddle, but a rhythm. Not a problem, but a poem. Let's say that you ask someone you trust. Be honest with me, do you think I'm doing the right thing? They pause, look you in the eye, and say something that hurts. But it's the truth. Their truth. And maybe even yours. You feel exposed, ashamed. But, strangely grateful too, or maybe not. Maybe you walk away wondering if they cared more about being right than being kind. And so we arrive at the tension. When truth and kindness collide, which should we choose? Let's start with truth. It's often seen as noble, a moral high ground, the foundation of trust. We say things like, I'd rather hear the hard truth than a comforting lie. Honesty is the best policy. Tell me how it really is. And sometimes, we mean it. But other times, what we really want is a version of the truth that doesn't hurt, that aligns with what we already believe, That feels supportive, even if it's selective, because truth can be a scalpel, precise, yes, but it can also cut deep. Now consider kindness, its warmth, its care, it's the balm we reach for when life becomes unbearable. A kind word at the right time can feel more healing than 1,000 facts. But kindness too has its limits. What if your kindness becomes dishonesty? What if your silence lets someone keep walking toward the edge of a cliff? What if your desire to protect ends up hurting them more in the long run? So which is more important, truth or kindness? And more importantly, can we have both? Here's one way to look at it. Imagine truth and kindness as two voices inside you. Truth says, say what's real, don't sugarcoat it. Facts matter. Kindness says, be gentle. People are fragile, timing matters, and in a perfect world, they would speak together. But often, one voice is louder than the other, and when that happens, we face a moral decision, one that doesn't have a clear answer. Let's say your friend has a dream. They want to be an actor, but they're not great. They ask you what you think of their performance. What do you say? Do you tell them it needs work, risking their self-esteem, or do you encourage them, even if it means reinforcing a false hope? The answer depends on what you value more in that moment. Their feelings, their growth, your integrity. Sometimes there's no right answer, only trade-offs. But maybe the real art is in the delivery, not what we say, but how we say it. Kindness doesn't have to mean lying, and truth doesn't have to mean cruelty. We can tell someone they've made a mistake, without making them feel like a failure. We can speak honestly, with words that don't shatter. There's a phrase, truth without kindness is brutality. Kindness without truth is manipulation. Somewhere between those two extremes is the voice we all need to find. And then there's another layer, self-deception. How kind are you when you're telling yourself the truth? How honest are you about your own flaws, fears, or blind spots? It's often easier to be brutally honest with others than to face your own shadow, or to be endlessly kind to others while starving yourself of grace. So maybe the truth versus kindness paradox isn't just about how we treat others, it's about how we treat ourselves too. We live in a world obsessed with opinions, with telling it like it is, with taking sides. But beneath all of that, there's something quieter, compassion. The ability to say what's true without needing to win. The ability to care without needing to pretend. The ability to recognize that every person you speak to is carrying something you can't see, and that your words, even whispered, can leave lasting marks. So maybe the goal isn't to choose truth or kindness, but to learn the rhythm of both, to know when to speak, when to pause, when to wait until someone is ready to hear, and when you're ready to say it, with a soft enough voice that it doesn't echo as pain. Have you ever woken up and felt like something was wrong? Not frightening, just off. Like your body remembered a different place, a different time, that you couldn't quite hold on to. You shake it off, you make coffee, you scroll, you speak. But part of you wonders, was that really a dream? Or is this? What if you're still asleep, but your mind forgot? What if you're dreaming right now, and you just don't know it? This isn't just the stuff of sci-fi films. It's a very real philosophical and cognitive question. How can you tell you're awake? Because it feels like it. Because the rules make sense. Because you remember yesterday. In dreams we also believe. We accept. We don't usually question, until something strange happens. The light doesn't work. Your phone turns into sand. A friend has no face. Then something clicks. Oh, this is a dream. But until that moment, it felt just as real as this. This phenomenon is known as a false awakening. A dream, where you wake up, go about your routine, brushing your teeth, driving to work, only to realize later you're still dreaming. Some people experience multiple false awakenings, waking up again and again, each time more convinced they're finally back in the real world, only to realize they're not. It's disorienting, terrifying even, but it poses a deep question. If every layer of the dream felt real at the time, what makes waking life different? Philosopher René Descartes struggled with this exact idea. In his dream argument, He asked, how can we be certain that this moment isn't just another dream? After all, in dreams we see, hear, feel, and even reason. So what's the test? What's the proof? He concluded that the only thing he could be absolutely sure of was that he was thinking, hence his famous line, "I think, therefore I am." But even that doesn't prove the nature of the world around you. It only confirms that something, some awareness is watching. And what does that mean for you? Right now you're listening to these words, maybe lying in bed, maybe drifting off. The voice sounds clear, the ideas feel grounded. But could this, all of this, be happening in a dream? Not a fantasy dream, with floating cities and flying dogs, but a perfectly ordinary dream designed to trick you, to convince you that it's real. Could your memories, your thoughts, your sense of identity, all be constructed, temporary illusions within a larger sleep? The science of dreaming doesn't help much here. We know that during REM sleep, the brain becomes hyperactive, visual centers light up, emotion surges, logic often takes a back seat. But what if your brain got so good at dreaming that it created a perfect replica of your waking world, complete with physics, cause and effect, even self-doubt? Could it simulate consciousness? Could it create a version of you who believes they're awake because they can ask the question? This leads to a chilling possibility. You might never truly know if you're awake or dreaming, because your only tools for judgment, your senses, your memory, your logic, are all part of the dream. It's like trying to escape a maze with a map drawn by the maze itself. You can search for glitches, you can poke at the edges, but the deeper the dream, the more convincing it becomes. Some dreamers, called lucid dreamers, learn to become aware within the dream. They train themselves to notice dream signs, inconsistencies, odd behavior, impossible events, and when they do, they gain control. They can fly, explore, ask the dream questions. But lucid dreaming isn't just a fun trick. It raises a deeper question. If you can wake up inside a dream, can you also wake up inside waking life? Can you become lucid, not in sleep, but in consciousness? Imagine this. You're walking through your day, everything seems normal, and then something small happens, a flicker in the lights, a stranger says your name, a sound loops the wrong way, you pause, you wonder, is this a dream? And in that moment, whether it is or isn't, something profound happens. You become aware, not just alive, but conscious of your own perception. You stop sleepwalking through your day, you begin to see. That perhaps is what it means to truly awaken. So maybe the question isn't, am I dreaming? Maybe the question is, am I paying attention? Because dreaming you're awake is less about sleep and more about awareness, more about questioning the stories you live in, the routines, the assumptions, the identities you cling to. You may not be asleep in bed, but that doesn't mean you're fully awake. Not yet. You've heard the phrase before. Nothing is impossible. It's used to inspire, to encourage, to push boundaries. It's the slogan of underdogs, the anthem of dreamers, a phrase stitched into posters, tattoos, and locker rooms around the world. But pause for a moment. Whisper it to yourself again. Nothing is impossible. And now, ask, is that actually true? Or is it, like many things that sound deep, a paradox in disguise? Let's look at the phrase logically. If nothing is impossible, then that would mean everything is possible, including the impossible. So is it possible for something to be impossible? If yes, then something is impossible, and the original statement collapses. If no, then we've created a rule, a boundary, something that is impossible, and we've contradicted ourselves again. It's a loop, a linguistic Mobius strip. The statement swallows its own tail. Now let's turn the phrase inside out. What if we read it, not as a motivational slogan, but as a philosophical claim? Can anything be possible? Can a triangle have 4 sides? Can 2 + 2 = 5? Can a rock be so heavy that even an omnipotent being can't lift it? These are logical impossibilities. They don't just challenge physics or engineering. They challenge the structure of reason itself. They break the rules that language and logic rest upon. So if nothing is impossible, must these be possible too? And if they can't be, then perhaps some things really are impossible, no matter how hard you wish. Still, possibility isn't always about logic. Sometimes, it's about imagination. Once, flying through the sky was considered absurd, so was speaking to someone across the ocean in real time, or stepping on the moon, or decoding the human genome. Each of those things was once labeled impossible, until someone decided it wasn't. So maybe when we say nothing is impossible, we're not talking about logic or physics. We're talking about belief, about refusing to accept limits without challenging them first. But belief has a dark side too. History is filled with examples of people attempting the impossible and breaking themselves in the process. There are things the human body cannot endure. There are boundaries nature will not bend. There are dreams that remain just out of reach, no matter how fierce the will. And that's where this phrase can become dangerous, because while it can empower, it can also distort. It can make people feel like failures for being human, for hitting limits that are very real. So maybe a more honest version is, some things are impossible, but we don't always know which ones. And that mystery, that uncertainty, is where potential lives. Because every breakthrough lives on the edge of the impossible. It whispers, this boundary might not be fixed. This rule might not be absolute. This wall might be a door in disguise. Here's another angle. If nothing is impossible, then so is failure. Then failure is just a step in the process. Then defeat isn't the end of the story. It's the middle, a comma, not a period. In that sense, the phrase becomes a kind of emotional armor, not a literal truth, but a lens to endure with. A way of saying, I don't know how, but I believe there's a way through. And sometimes, that's enough. Now let's travel inward. Is it possible to fully understand yourself, to hold all your contradictions in one hand, to know, completely, what you want, why you hurt, who you are? Or is the self one of those paradoxes that lives just outside your reach, not because it's fake, but because it's fluid, because every time you try to define it, you've already changed? So what do we do with a phrase like nothing is impossible? Do we discard it as logically flawed? Do we embrace it as motivational poetry? Or do we hold it gently, as something both true and false, depending on how we look? Maybe the real power of this phrase is not in what it claims, but in what it asks. What boundary are you assuming that isn't real? What impossibility is just an untested truth? And just as importantly, what dream are you chasing, without asking if it needs chasing at all? You're dreaming. You know it. And yet you don't. The sky feels strange. People speak in riddles. You walk through familiar places that don't obey gravity or time. And then, suddenly, you die. Maybe you fall, or someone chases you, or something unspeakable happens. Your body crumbles. You're falling through space. And then, you wake up. But what just happened? Why do so many people report the same sensation? Falling, fading, dissolving, just before waking. What is it about death in dreams that seems to trigger awareness? Or more unsettlingly, what if you didn't wake up? What if the death was only the end of that dream, and you're still inside another, still dreaming, right now? The concept of dying in a dream has fascinated thinkers for centuries. Some say it symbolizes transformation, a shedding of identity, a way your subconscious processes change. Others say it's an existential rehearsal, a sandbox simulation for your brain to grapple with the impossible idea of not existing. But here's the eerie part. When you die in a dream, you don't just disappear. Something remains. An awareness, an observer. The body in the dream may vanish, but you are still there, waking up somewhere else. This raises a disturbing question. If you can die in a dream and still continue, then what is death really? Is it the end of something, or a doorway to something else? And how do you know this moment right now isn't just another layer of the dream? Let's consider a thought experiment. You fall asleep in your bed. You begin dreaming. In that dream you fall asleep again, and you dream within the dream. You go about your life, walking, speaking, thinking. You're convinced it's real. Then one day you die. You wake up, but not in your real bed, just in the first dream. You're still dreaming. You don't realize it. This layering of dream upon dream is not just fiction. It's been experienced in lucid dreaming studies. Some dreamers report being stuck in recursive dream loops with no clear exit. Each layer feels real, until they wake up again. Now stretch this idea further. If a dream can feel fully immersive, with time, logic, emotion, even memory, how would you know you're not dreaming right now? If death in a dream simply moves you to another layer, could what we call waking life be just one more tier? And what happens when you die here? Do you wake up again, elsewhere? Philosophers like Descartes wondered this centuries ago. In his famous dream argument, he questioned whether any experience, even this one, could be fully trusted. If dreams can mimic reality so perfectly, how can we be sure we're ever truly awake? And if death in a dream doesn't mean the end of awareness, what does that say about death in waking life? Is death a hard stop, or just the next room? Some interpretations from Tibetan Buddhism suggest that death is a kind of dream, a transitional state called the bardo, where the self dissolves and experiences strange visions before rebirth or liberation. And in neuroscience we know that just before waking, brain activity surges in ways similar to death's final moments. So maybe, just maybe, what we call death isn't destruction, it's transition, a shift of perception, a letting go of the illusion we believed was permanent. But let's come back to the experience. The dream death. You fall, you dissolve, you wake up, gasping. Why is that moment so universally terrifying? Perhaps it's because it reminds us of something we don't want to admit, that nothing is certain, that reality is fragile, that you are more ephemeral than you seem. But there's beauty in that too, because if awareness can survive 1,000 deaths in 1,000 dreams, then maybe awareness itself is deeper than form. Maybe the you that dreams is not the body, not even the mind, but the silent watcher, the one who never fully sleeps, the one who always wakes up. So if you ever find yourself falling in a dream, or dying, don't panic. See what happens. Notice what remains. Ask yourself, who is watching this unfold? And when you finally wake into whatever comes next, ask again, was that the dream, or is this? You make a mistake. It could be something small, forgetting a word, stumbling over a sentence, a miscalculation on a form, or, it could be bigger, choosing the wrong path, hurting someone unintentionally, falling short of who you wanted to be. And in that moment, you feel it. The sharpness, the shame, the sting of being wrong. But take a breath. Step back. Ask yourself something radical. What if the mistake wasn't a failure, but the beginning of a deeper truth? Let's reframe it. In biology, growth often comes from error. Cells mutate. Some die, some adapt, some evolve. Without variation, without mistakes, life would be static, unchanging, brittle. It's through randomness, misfires, and genetic slip-ups that species diversify, that survival becomes possible. So in nature, a mistake isn't the opposite of progress. It is the mechanism of progress. Without it, nothing moves forward. And now think about the human brain. When a child learns to walk, they don't start by running. They fall, again and again, hundreds of times. Their brain records those failed attempts. Each wobble sends feedback through the nervous system. Try again, but adjust. Eventually, balance, motion, mastery. All because the brain doesn't treat mistakes as final but as data. Mistake, feedback, correction. That's how growth happens. Now here's something even more fascinating. When we make a mistake, say solving a math problem incorrectly, and then correct it ourselves, neuroscientists have found our brains learn better than if we'd just been told the correct answer. Why? Because the act of correcting ourselves rewires the brain more deeply. It reinforces memory. It strengthens understanding. So the mistake isn't a detour, it's the road itself. The mind sharpens by being wrong. In psychology, there's a concept called a growth mindset. It's the idea that intelligence, skill, and ability aren't fixed traits. They're developed through effort and persistence. And central to this mindset is the belief that mistakes are not threats to your identity. They are signs that you're learning, that you are stretching beyond your current limits. When we fear being wrong, we stop trying, we shrink. But when we embrace failure as fertile ground, we become explorers, experimenters, artists of our own evolution. Of course, not all mistakes feel enlightening. Some feel devastating, some carry consequences, regret, loss. But even here, there's potential. Mistakes often reveal our blind spots. They shine a light on areas we were afraid to look at, our patterns, our assumptions, our beliefs about ourselves. And in that uncomfortable mirror, we often find the clearest path to growth. It hurts, but it also heals. Now consider this. If we edited every mistake out of your past, every embarrassing moment, every misstep, would you still be you? Or would you be a polished version, stripped of depth, flattened into predictability? What defines you more, your successes, or what you learned when you failed? Who would you trust more? Someone who's never fallen, or someone who fell and got up stronger? Maybe the real wisdom isn't in never failing, but in how we relate to failure. Here's a curious thought. In Japanese aesthetics, there's a practice called kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. The idea is simple, but powerful. When something breaks, you don't hide the cracks, you highlight them. You fill them with something precious, because the imperfection becomes part of the story. A piece becomes more beautiful, because it was broken, not despite it. Now imagine your life as one of those vessels. Each mistake, a crack, each lesson, a seam of gold. You are not damaged. You are designed by experience. So the next time you mess up, pause, resist the urge to retreat. Instead, lean into the discomfort. Ask, what is this mistake teaching me? What belief is it challenging? What growth is being invited? You are not failing. You are refining. You are not broken. You are becoming. And if mistakes feel messy, chaotic, even painful, good. That means you're alive. That means you're paying attention. That means something new is trying to take shape inside you. Imagine your hand reaching out to touch something. Maybe a tabletop, a loved one's skin, a glass of water. You feel pressure, resistance, the slight texture under your fingertips. You know you're touching it. But here's the strange, unsettling truth. You're not really. According to modern physics, you've never touched anything in your life, and nothing has ever truly touched you. It seems impossible. Touch is one of the most intimate, grounding sensations we have. It defines our presence in the world. It anchors us to the moment. But the reality is deeper and stranger. On the atomic level, every object is made up of atoms. You are made of atoms. But atoms aren't solid. They're mostly empty space, a tiny nucleus surrounded by a cloud of electrons, moving at nearly unimaginable speeds. And when you bring two atoms close together, they don't crash into each other, they repel. This is due to a phenomenon called the electromagnetic force. The electrons in your fingertip and the electrons in, say, your coffee mug repel each other with incredible consistency. The closer they get, the stronger the repulsion. So what you feel when you touch the mug isn't your atoms interlocking with its atoms. It's the electromagnetic resistance between your body and the surface, like two invisible shields pressing against one another without ever truly merging. So by that definition, no contact ever really happens, only the illusion of contact, a force, a field, an interaction of probability and distance. And yet, our entire experience of reality is based on the feeling that we're touching it. We hug, we type, we walk on the ground, we hold hands, and all the while, no atoms are actually touching. We live our whole lives in a dance of repulsion. Let's go deeper. When you touch something, neurons in your skin fire signals to your brain. Your brain interprets those signals as texture, temperature, pressure. But the sensation of touch is just a constructed map, a simulation really. Your mind builds a model of what touch should feel like, and then plays it for you in real time. So the feeling of touching is entirely internal, not contact, but communication, not matter, but message. This has profound implications. If touch is a mental interpretation of electrical resistance, then how do we define closeness? What does it mean to physically connect in a world where physicality is an illusion? Can we ever really hold something? Can we ever truly be with someone? Or are we forever caught in a world where nearness is just a simulation of what we want connection to be? This thought unsettles, and yet, there's something strangely comforting in it too. If we're all made of energy fields, interacting without touching, then in some sense we're all constantly connected, not by contact, but by interaction, by proximity, by awareness. We influence each other even from inches away, even from miles away, even from behind screens. And if we zoom in even further, into the quantum realm, particles themselves become uncertain. Their positions blur, their boundaries fade. They exist as clouds of probability until observed, which means your fingertip and the object beneath it don't have definite edges. They merge, not physically, but informationally. So maybe touch isn't a collision of particles, but a shared moment of entanglement, a brief overlap in the data fields of existence. So do we ever touch? No, not in the way we think we do, not atom to atom, not skin to surface, but in another sense, a deeper, stranger sense. We touch everything we come near. We leave a trace, we feel the pushback, we alter the field, and maybe that's what touch really is, not a moment of contact, but of change. So the next time you hold someone's hand, remember, you're not really touching them. Your atoms are resisting theirs, fields interacting in invisible space, and yet, you feel warmth, you feel pressure, you feel love. Maybe that's enough, maybe it's more than enough. You're in grade school again. A test sits on your desk. One word stands out, wrong. You hesitate. You spell it. W-R-O-N-G. The teacher nods. You're correct. But imagine this. You spell it R-O-N-G. They mark it wrong. But if it's wrong, and wrong is spelled R-O-N-G, then didn't you just spell wrong right? And just like that, you fall into a loop. A linguistic trapdoor, disguised as a spelling test. Welcome to the paradox of meaning, where language, this thing we trust so deeply, suddenly bends, breaks, and reflects itself. What happens when words refer to themselves? When the message is tangled in the medium? Let's look closer. Language is a system, an agreement. We all silently nod to one another, accepting that cat means a furry animal, that red refers to a certain color, and that wrong is both an error and the word for error. But language is also a mirror, reflecting how we think, and sometimes, how we get stuck. Wrong is especially weird. It's a word that defines itself by negation. It exists only in contrast to what is right. So when you spell wrong wrong, you're not just making a mistake, you're performing one. And somehow, that performance is correct. This is known in logic and linguistics as a semantic paradox, a kind of mental feedback loop, where meaning eats itself. Another example. Try this. This sentence is false. If it's false, then it must be true. But if it's true, then it must be false. Your brain tries to escape, but there is no exit, just a sentence looping around itself forever. Wrong behaves the same way when it refers to its own misspelling. Suddenly, a single word becomes a logic puzzle. There's another layer here too. The word wrong comes from Old English, rang, meaning crooked or twisted. It wasn't just about error. It was about something bent out of shape. So maybe spelling wrong as wrong isn't just incorrect. It's a correction to something that was already twisted. Maybe the real mistake was calling it wrong in the first place. What if we've been spelling wrong wrong this whole time? Now step back. This isn't just about a word. It's about certainty, about how fragile our sense of rightness can be. What else do we label wrong simply because it doesn't match expectation? An accent, a cultural difference, a new way of thinking, a different spelling. Is it actually wrong, or just unfamiliar? And if enough people agree with it, doesn't it become right? Language evolves through mistake. Slang becomes formal, typos become standard, rules break, and we write new ones. That's how Google became a verb, how selfie entered dictionaries, how the word literally now literally means figuratively. Yes, really. So maybe wrong isn't fixed. Maybe it's a moving target, always defined by the present moment's consensus. And maybe spelling wrong right isn't about accuracy, but about awareness. There's beauty in this. Language reveals how the human mind creates order out of chaos, but sometimes the chaos peeks back through the misspelling, the stutter, the contradiction, and when it does, we get a glimpse of something deeper. That meaning is not always logical. Sometimes it's absurd, circular, imperfect, just like us. So next time you see a typo, a misuse, a jumbled sentence, pause, take a moment, ask yourself, is it really wrong, or is it just early, just waiting for its moment to become the next right? You walk into a room. There's a machine humming quietly in the center, its lights blinking in a rhythm that feels mathematical. You hesitate, then you press a button, and in less than a breath, you are no longer here, no longer now. You've traveled back, maybe a day, maybe a decade, maybe to a time before you were born. But here's the question: what now? What happens if you change something? What happens if you change everything? And more hauntingly, what if, just by going back, you've already set something in motion you can't undo? This is the seductive trap of time travel, a concept that appears in ancient myths, modern physics, and every sci-fi franchise you've ever fallen asleep to. But it's not just fiction, it's one of the most profound questions we can ask about reality. Not just can we move through time, but what happens if we do? Let's start with the basics. In our everyday experience, time flows in one direction, past, present, future. But in physics, especially in Einstein's theory of relativity, time is more flexible. It's not a straight line. It's part of space-time which bends, stretches, and warps depending on mass and speed. And in some interpretations, it might even loop. So theoretically, with enough energy, or under the right cosmic conditions, time travel might be possible. But here's where things get twisted. Imagine going back in time and stopping your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. This is the famous grandfather paradox. If you succeed, you're never born. But if you're never born, you couldn't have gone back to stop them. So they do meet, and then you're born. Which means you could go back and stop them again. An infinite loop, cause and effect, chasing each other's tails. A paradox with no exit. One way to escape the paradox is the multiverse theory. The idea here is that every change you make splits reality into a new timeline. You didn't stop your grandfather, you created a different world where someone else was never born. But this doesn't really solve the trap, it just multiplies it. Now, instead of one tangled story, you have infinite variations, infinite selves, infinite consequences, and you're no longer part of a single thread, but a web with no center, no truth, no real version of you. Then there's the bootstrap paradox, another mind-bender. Suppose you travel back in time and hand Shakespeare a copy of Hamlet. He publishes it. It becomes famous. Centuries later, you read it. Then you go back and give it to him again. But now ask yourself, who wrote Hamlet? You didn't. You just passed it along. He didn't. He just received it. So where did it come from? The loop has no origin, no beginning, no author, just an object, a story, a person trapped in time's echo. This is the true trap of time travel. It's not the danger of machines, or monsters, or even collapsing timelines. It's the collapse of causality. Time becomes a circle instead of a line. You're no longer moving from past to future. You're looping in a narrative that erases its own reason for existing. And once cause and effect dissolve, so does meaning. But here's a deeper question. Are we already in the trap? Think about this. Every time you remember something, your brain recreates it slightly differently. Every memory is a reconstruction. So in a way, you're already traveling through time, not with a machine, but with consciousness. And if your memory changes, did your past change? And if you act differently because of how you remember something, is that not a form of rewriting time? Some physicists now propose that the present doesn't exist at all, that all moments, past, present, future, exist simultaneously in a four-dimensional block universe. And you, the consciousness experiencing this sliver of now, are just a passenger sliding along the track. No control, no freedom, just a ride. So maybe the time travel trap isn't something we fall into. Maybe we were born in it. Maybe we've never left. So why do we cling to the fantasy? Because time travel represents something more than paradoxes and loops. It's the desire to change what we regret, to relive what we've lost, to fix what we broke. It's a longing for control in a universe that offers none. But what if the real wisdom isn't in trying to alter the past, but in learning to live with it? Imagine you wake up tomorrow, and there's someone in your room. They look exactly like you. Same voice, same scars, same memories, even the same awkward smile when nervous. They're not pretending. They are you, a perfect clone. And here's the twist. They claim to be the original, and now, only one of you can walk away. The question is, which one is real? And deeper still, what does real even mean? This is the unsettling thought experiment known as the clone paradox, or, more dramatically, the clone fight. It's not really about fists or weapons. It's a battle over identity, over self, over what makes you you. At first it seems like a sci-fi scenario, something out of a dystopian novel or a Black Mirror episode. But beneath the fiction lurks something very real, the terrifying fragility of personal identity. Let's break it down. If a clone has all of your memories, your habits, your voice, your thoughts, your quirks, how is that different from being you? From their perspective, they remember your childhood. They feel ownership of your dreams. They might even finish your sentences before you think of them. So, who has the right to continue your life? Which one of you deserves to be called authentic? And does that question even make sense? Philosophers have played with this dilemma for centuries. Think of John Locke's theory of personal identity. He believed identity is tied to continuous memory. You are the same person today as yesterday because you remember being yesterday's you. But what if someone else remembers it too, perfectly, without error, without gaps? By Locke's standard, your clone has just as much right to be you as you do. Now the edges start to blur. Then there's Derek Parfit, who proposed something radical. Identity is not what matters. He argued that psychological continuity matters more than some magical soul or unbroken thread. In other words, if the clone thinks and feels like you, if they remember your dog's name and know what makes you cry, then maybe that's enough. The clone isn't a copy. They're just another valid version, a continuation of your pattern. But that raises another strange question. Are you just a pattern, a configuration of matter, memories, neural activity? Are we all just machines running the same biological software? And if so, can you be duplicated? Can you be turned into an exportable file? And if two copies run the same code, which one is you? Or are they both? Or neither? This isn't just abstract philosophy. Real-world science is inching closer to these questions. Cloning animals. Already done. Mapping the brain. In progress. Simulating consciousness. Not yet, but people are trying, and with each step forward, the sacred boundary of self starts to feel less sacred. You begin to wonder, is the I protect so fiercely just a story I tell myself? A convincing illusion? A necessary fiction to keep the organism functioning? Now imagine the psychological spiral. You see your clone across the room. They speak like you, laugh like you. They know your secrets. They don't want to hurt you. They are you. But your very existence threatens theirs. and there's yours. This is not a physical fight. It's an ontological war, a question of being, a riddle with no resolution. If you destroy them, have you just destroyed part of yourself? If they live, do you become a ghost? And if you both survive, how do you coexist? Two versions, one life. Science fiction loves to play with this. In movies like Moon, The Prestige, Living with Yourself, or Oblivion, clones force us to ask what identity is when memory and biology are no longer unique. But maybe this isn't just about sci-fi, maybe it's a metaphor, a lens on how we change, how we outgrow versions of ourselves, how the you from 10 years ago might feel like a stranger now. You've already cloned yourself, in a way, and left those versions behind. We shed identities like skin, one memory at a time. Maybe the real clone fight is happening quietly within you. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean. You hold a small cup in your hand, scooping up a bit of water. You examine it, analyze it, label its contents, and call it knowledge. But then you look back out at the ocean and realize you've barely touched the surface. That feeling, awe, humility, even a touch of fear, that's the essence of this idea. Knowing that you don't know. It sounds simple, almost like a confession, but in truth, it's one of the most profound realizations a person can have, because we spend so much of our lives trying to know. We study, memorize, categorize. We collect information like coins, hoping that enough of them will buy us certainty. But the deeper you go into knowledge, the more you realize just how much you've overlooked. In ancient Greece, Socrates was known for saying, "I know that I know nothing." At first glance, that seems paradoxical. If he knows nothing, how can he knows nothing? But look closer. He was making a distinction between false knowledge and awareness of ignorance. He noticed that the wisest people weren't the ones who claimed to know everything, but those who understood how little they truly grasped. That awareness was wisdom. Fast forward to today, we live in the information age, more data, more access, more opinions than ever before. And yet, we're often more confused, more divided, more overwhelmed. Why? Because knowledge isn't the same as understanding, and information isn't the same as truth. The illusion of knowledge can be more dangerous than ignorance itself. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a cognitive bias where people with limited understanding overestimate their competence. They don't know enough to realize what they don't know. Meanwhile, those with more knowledge tend to underestimate themselves. Because the more you learn, the more you notice the vastness of what remains unknown. True intelligence, then, often sounds like this: I'm not sure. It depends. I need to learn more. I don't know. This isn't weakness. This is clarity. A mind that knows it doesn't know isn't empty. It's ready. It has space for complexity, room for growth, the humility to be surprised. In Zen philosophy, there's the idea of the beginner's mind, Shoshin. It means approaching every moment as if you're seeing it for the first time, without assumption, without ego, not because you're uninformed, but because you understand that knowledge should never harden into certainty. Even in science, which we often view as the pursuit of truth, the best minds constantly revise, question and reframe. Isaac Newton gave us laws of motion that seemed absolute. Then came Einstein, with relativity. Now we have quantum mechanics, which breaks the rules we thought were fixed. Each new layer of understanding reveals more mystery. The closer we look, the stranger it all becomes. It's not that we aren't learning, it's that learning reveals how much more there is to learn. Knowing you don't know also frees you. It releases the burden of pretending to be certain. It allows for curiosity, instead of defensiveness. Instead of saying, I already understand this, you get to ask, what else could this be? And that opens doors you didn't know existed. But here's the deeper twist. Not only do you not know, you don't know what you don't know. There may be entire categories of reality you've never imagined. Questions you've never formed, because your framework doesn't allow them. It's like searching for stars while standing under a roof. You may not even realize you're indoors. So what do we do with this awareness? Do we collapse under it? Give up trying? No, we hold it gently, We let it sharpen our questions, soften our pride, and deepen our patience. We learn to sit in the mystery. We understand that not every silence needs to be filled. Not every unknown needs to be solved. Sometimes the unknown is where peace lives. You're walking into a job interview. You've prepared for every question, except the one they won't ask. Because someone once told you, expect the unexpected. But what does that even mean? If you truly expect the unexpected, isn't it no longer unexpected? And if it's still unexpected, then you didn't expect it. This isn't just a clever contradiction. It's a trap hidden inside a cliché, a paradox that folds logic in on itself, a thought that devours its own meaning, like a snake swallowing its tail. This is the mental hall of mirrors we enter when we try to outsmart uncertainty itself. Let's slow it down. At its core, expecting the unexpected is a kind of mental posture. It suggests openness, adaptability, the readiness for surprise. We're told to embrace it in life, in business, in relationships, even in war. Be ready for anything. But the moment you try to prepare for everything, you bump up against something unsettling. You can't. The universe is too large, too chaotic, too strange. There are more possible surprises than you could ever imagine. You can't prepare for a concept you don't have the language to describe yet. You can't pack for a destination you don't know exists. That's the riddle. Trying to be ready for the unknown is like trying to drink from a cup before it's been invented. So why do we try? Because control feels safe. Prediction feels powerful. To expect the unexpected is to maintain the illusion that we are one step ahead of chaos, that we're not caught off guard, that we're somehow sharper than fate. It's a psychological armor, but like most armor, it's heavy, and eventually, it cracks. Here's the mind-bending part. Sometimes expecting the unexpected becomes the reason you miss what's actually happening. You're so focused on what might go wrong, you fail to see what's going right, or what's unfolding in front of you. In psychology, this is called inattentional blindness. You filter for what you expect, and the brain deletes the rest. Ironically, your obsession with surprise makes you more likely to miss it. Consider how this plays out in daily life. You brace for emotional pain. You expect someone to let you down. You rehearse every worst-case scenario. And when it happens, you feel prepared. But at what cost? Did that preparation keep you safe, or did it just keep you anxious? You can't experience joy while constantly scanning for disaster. To live in a world of unexpecteds is to live in perpetual suspense, and suspense over time becomes exhaustion. But then again, isn't some level of anticipation necessary? Aren't the most resilient people those who adapt to change? Yes, but here's the key difference. Anticipation is not paranoia. Being open to surprise is not the same as trying to map every possibility. The first is flexible. The second is fear disguised as strategy. In the realm of quantum physics, uncertainty isn't just a possibility. It's baked into the universe itself. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle tells us you can't know both the position and velocity of a particle with complete accuracy. The act of measuring one disturbs the other. In other words, the very act of observation limits certainty. The universe is built to surprise you, and sometimes the harder you look, the less you see. Expecting the unexpected is like trying to stare down a quantum wave and ask it to behave. In Zen, there's a koan that asks, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. It's not literal, of course. It means that the moment you think you've found certainty, truth, and enlightenment, you've likely just found your own expectations reflected back at you. Real truth arrives uninvited, unprepared for. You don't schedule an epiphany. You don't plan for awe. You allow space for it. You make room for mystery. So maybe the real wisdom isn't expect the unexpected. Maybe it's welcome the unknown, not as a threat, but as a teacher. Not with clenched fists, but with open hands. Because the unexpected is where growth happens, where creativity lives, where life actually unfolds. And here's the quiet twist. The most unexpected things are often the things that were always there, just unnoticed. The person who always loved you. The thought you didn't know you needed. The silence between the noise. You thought you were waiting for something spectacular, but maybe the miracle was hiding in plain sight. You just didn't expect it. We think we know what yes means. A word of clarity, agreement, direction, a green light in a world of red. But sometimes, yes is not a signal, it's a disguise. You hear the word, you understand the sentence, and still, something doesn't feel right, because beneath the surface of language, meaning can fracture. This isn't about miscommunication, it's about something stranger, a moment where words unravel the very truths they're meant to carry, where language fails not because it's unclear, but because it's too precise, and in that precision, it traps us, just like a crocodile at the edge of a river, waiting for the answer that makes no sense, and yet cannot be wrong. Let's start simple. You ask someone if they're okay. They say, "Yeah, I'm fine," but their voice is flat. Their eyes dart. They're clearly not fine. And you know that, because tone betrays text. Posture shouts louder than words. This is a case of performative language, when speech becomes a social costume, a buffer between inner truth and outer expectation. Yes doesn't mean yes. It means I don't want to talk. Leave it alone. Don't make this harder. In this context, yes is a mask, a tool of self-protection. Now scale it up. Social interactions, relationships, careers, entire lives shaped by yes, that meant no. Yes, I'll take that job. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'm happy with how things are. How many of these yes were said to avoid conflict, to maintain harmony, to survive? Sometimes, yes is what we say when we don't feel safe to say no. We choose comfort over honesty, peace over truth, until the yes becomes a quiet form of self-erasure, and then it gets even stranger. There are moments when yes and no become indistinguishable, when we agree to something not because we want to, but because we don't know how not to. Is that consent? Is that agreement? When does yes become a performance instead of a decision? At what point does choice disappear into expectation? Philosophers have wrestled with this. In post-structuralist thought, language is not a stable mirror of truth, but a game of shifting signs. Words point to other words, meanings depend on context, and meaning itself is always slightly delayed, unstable. So even when someone says yes, what we hear depends on what we believe they mean. Communication becomes probabilistic, not definite, a guess, not a guarantee. Now consider culture. In some cultures, yes never really means yes. It means I hear you, or I acknowledge your request, or I respect your position, but not necessarily, I agree. In others, saying no outright is considered rude, so yes becomes a tool of diplomacy, a placeholder. And yet, across languages, across societies, we pretend words are fixed, like truth lives in syllables, even when it clearly slips through them. Here's the eerie part. Sometimes you say yes to yourself, when deep down you mean no. Yes, I'm over it. Yes, I'm fine being alone. Yes, this is what I want. But there's a part of you watching, knowing the truth, unmoved by the performance, and eventually, the body starts to speak, through anxiety, fatigue, disconnection, a quiet rebellion from within, because somewhere inside, you said no, and your mouth didn't listen. This is where contradiction becomes spiritual. In Zen practice, a koan is a paradoxical riddle meant to short-circuit logic. One such koan: if you say yes, you affirm; if you say no, you deny. But what if there is no question? Sometimes, the yes and no binary is the problem itself. Maybe the truth can't fit into either. Maybe some feelings, some truths, can only live in the in-between, where no language can touch them. So what do we do? How do we live in a world where yes means no, and no sometimes feels like a betrayal? We begin by listening more deeply, to tone, to breath, to silence, to the moment someone says yes, but their voice trembles, or they glance away, or hesitate just long enough to give it all away. And we learn to ask, do you really want this? Is that your truth, or just your habit? Sometimes we need to ask again, gently, without pressure, without agenda, because offering someone a safe space to say no might be the kindest thing we can do. And then, of course, there's the mirror. What are the yeses you've said that weren't really yes? What were you protecting? Who were you trying to please? And is it time to revisit them? To tell the truth your body already knows. A circle has no edges. That's what makes it a circle. Smooth. Perfect. Endless. No corners. No direction. No start. No end. And yet, here we are, talking about the edgy circle. So what happens when a shape defined by having no edges starts to feel like it does? Let's begin with something familiar. You're caught in a loop, a thought you can't let go of, a decision you keep circling, a memory you replay again and again. It's not going anywhere, not forward, not backward, just spinning. You think you're moving through it, but you're just walking in a circle, a loop so smooth, you don't notice there's no exit, until one day, you feel it. A corner, a jolt, a sharpness, something that wasn't there before. The circle suddenly feels edgy. This is the edgy circle, a paradox you live inside, a pattern you mistake for motion. A loop that pretends to be progress, but over time what once felt whole and seamless starts to show its seams. Comfort becomes confinement, perfection becomes prison. You start asking, wait, haven't I been here before? In mathematics, a perfect circle is a theoretical shape, an abstraction. In real life, no circle is perfect. Even the smoothest curve, under a microscope, is jagged, pixelated, made of points, approximations. Every curve is a lie made of tiny edges, so maybe the edgy circle isn't a contradiction at all. Maybe it's what we all live in, the illusion of smoothness that up close is just complexity in disguise. There's a story in Greek mythology, Sisyphus, cursed to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity. Each time he nears the top, the boulder slips. He starts again, round and round. The illusion of effort, without progress. That's the edgy circle too. The feeling of trying so hard, of doing everything right, and still ending up where you began. Except now, you're tired. You start to question the shape of your life. Is it a path, or a loop? And if it's a loop, how do you escape a shape with no beginning? The edgy circle is also emotional. You forgive someone, then they hurt you again. You forgive again. At first it feels like healing, but then you realize you've been walking the same circle with them for years. No growth, no learning, just repetition. Suddenly, forgiveness doesn't feel kind. It feels like inertia, and the circle starts to burn. The edge appears. In philosophy, there's a term, recursion, when a process refers to itself. Thought thinking about thought, awareness becoming aware of itself. It creates loops, strange ones. Douglas Hofstadter called them strange loops, feedback systems, where the observer becomes part of what's being observed, like looking into two mirrors facing each other. Endless reflections, you, inside you, a circle, but unsettling, uneven, sharp. You're not sure who's thinking anymore. You've become the thought. That's an edgy circle too. And in the mind, we create edgy circles all the time. Anxiety about anxiety, guilt about guilt, thinking about why you're thinking about what you're thinking. Loops that twist into themselves, each turn tighter, each repetition a little louder, until your mind feels like a spiral staircase that only leads back to the same floor. You try to exit, but the door is a mirror, and the knob is your own hand. So what do we do with a circle that suddenly has edges? You could try to sharpen the edge, break the loop, burn the pattern, escape, or you could learn to see the edge as a signal, the discomfort that tells you this isn't working anymore. This isn't growth, it's repetition. It's time to reshape the shape. Sometimes, we must turn the circle into a spiral, still looping, but rising, still repeating, but growing. A return that isn't identical, a loop that stretches towards something new. That's the secret of the edgy circle. It wakes you up to the illusion of smoothness, to the lie of sameness. It whispers, you've been here before. but you don't have to stay. Can someone read your mind? Not literally, not with telepathy or brain chips, yet. But something more subtle, more ordinary. Something we all do, without realizing it. You walk into a room, you feel like someone doesn't like you. Their expression, neutral, their body language, still. But something in you reacts. So you act cold, withdraw, avoid eye contact. And in return, they seem distant. So you were right, weren't you? Or, did you make it true? Welcome to the mind reader feedback loop. A strange psychological echo chamber, where thoughts you suspect in others become thoughts you provoke. It begins with a guess, a mental prediction. She probably thinks I'm boring. He must think I'm weird. They're judging me. You adjust your behavior based on that guess. You pull back, you act defensive, or you try too hard. And the person on the other side, confused, sensing your shift, responds to that behavior. Now they actually do think something's off. Your suspicion becomes their reality. Their reaction confirms your fear, a perfect loop, a closed circuit of self-fulfilling thought. Psychologists call it interpersonal expectancy theory. Your expectations about someone, spoken or unspoken, can subtly change how you treat them, and that change in treatment affects their behavior in return. In one study, teachers were told certain students were likely to show a sudden growth in intelligence. The students were chosen at random, but months later, those students did perform better. Why? Because the teachers, believing in their potential, treated them differently, asked more questions, showed more encouragement, offered more patience. The mind reader loop. Belief becomes behavior, behavior becomes response, response confirms belief. Now imagine this, applied to the self. You walk through life assuming people won't like you. You brace for judgment. You shrink yourself. And people respond. Not to who you are, but to the mask you've put on to survive the assumption, which only convinces you that your assumption was true. But what if it wasn't? What if people never had those thoughts until your fear introduced them? How many relationships have we quietly corrupted, not with malice, but with invisible expectations? There's something beautifully eerie about this. The mind becomes an environmental force. It leaks out through micro-expressions, body posture, eye movement, vocal tone. You don't need to say, "I don't trust you." You just need to feel it. And others will feel it too, often without knowing why. They respond. You interpret. They reflect. You believe. The loop tightens. You're reading their mind, but you're reading a mirror. And this loop works in reverse too. Have you ever met someone who truly believed in your brilliance? Not performatively, not flattery, but genuine quiet certainty. And in their presence you rose. Not because they gave you anything, but because their belief dissolved your fear. Their mental model of you lifted you into it. This is the light side of the loop, where mind reading doesn't project doubt, but possibility, where expectation is an act of creation. And then there's groupthink, social media, culture. One mind guesses what the others are thinking, then echoes it, then the others echo the echo, until no one remembers where the original thought came from. Each person, reacting to a ghost, a cloud of assumptions, reverberating across digital space. And the loop doesn't just form between people, it forms within society itself. Expectation becomes trend. Trend becomes norm. Norm becomes belief. And still no one ever said it out loud. So what can we do? How do we break the loop? It begins with doubt, but the right kind of doubt. Doubt not in yourself, but in your assumptions about others. What if they're not judging you? What if they're just tired? What if they're anxious too? What if they're afraid you're judging them? Each alternative opens a crack in the loop, a window, a breath, a moment where the feedback doesn't feed back. We're all part of this dance, guessing what others think, becoming what they expect, expecting what they reflect. A house of mirrors. But maybe the secret isn't to smash the mirrors, but to realize they're mirrors at all, to see the loop as it's forming, and choose if only once to step outside it. Let's pause for something simple, earthy, bodily, human. You've done it. We've all done it. We do it daily. You go to the bathroom, you take a dump. But wait, you take a dump. But wait, you take a dump. Why is that the phrase? You're not taking anything. You're releasing, letting go. If anything, you're giving one back. A return to the ecosystem, a donation, not a theft. So why do we say take? What happens when we turn our gaze on something this mundane and refuse to look away? This segment isn't about toilet humor. It's about the unexamined patterns of language, the assumptions buried in everyday speech, and what they reveal about how we frame reality. Because taking a dump isn't just an odd phrase, it's a linguistic glitch, and glitches can be portals. Let's break it down. In English we say, I'm going to take a shower, take a nap, take a breath, take a dump, but not, take a walk from the floor, or take a cry from your emotions. There's something strange going on. In many cases, take doesn't mean to seize or remove, it means to undergo, to engage in a process. When you take a nap, you're not stealing sleep from the bed, you're experiencing a rest state. Language evolves this way, not by logic, but by usage. But every now and then, a phrase holds up a mirror, and this one reflects something deeper. When you take a dump, you're referring to a biological truth, a letting go, an excretion, a physical release of waste. But calling it a take subtly reverses the direction, as if even in this most private, most natural act, we still want to claim something, possess it, make it ours, even if it's something we're done with, even if it's something we don't want. There's a kind of psychological metaphor here. How often do we cling to things we should be releasing? Old thoughts, shame, guilt, opinions we've outgrown, beliefs that no longer serve us. We don't always let go cleanly. We hold on to waste, not just physically but mentally, and then pretend it's still valuable, like linguistic compost. So maybe taking a dump is more than a quirk. Maybe it's a symptom of a culture that turns everything into a transaction, where even release must be reframed as acquisition. You're not letting go, you're taking something, because power lies in ownership, even when the object in question is, well, not something you want to keep. Let's step even deeper into the metaphor. Digestion is a process. You consume, you absorb, you eliminate. The body discards what's unnecessary, what can't be used. It's efficient, selective, intelligent. But the mind tends to hoard. We keep every bad memory, every regret, every cruel word spoken to us in passing. We rehearse them, relive them, let them rot inside. We don't always know how to eliminate psychic waste. So here's the mirror. Are there thoughts you need to release? Mental debris that served its purpose? What would happen if you let it go like the body lets go of waste? Not with shame, not with fear, but as a natural part of life, a process, a rhythm, a cleansing. There's also something humbling here. No matter how advanced we get, no matter how spiritual, philosophical, or technologically evolved, we all return to the basics. We all eat, digest, and yes, poop. It's the great equalizer. The philosopher, the billionaire, the monk, the newborn, everyone takes a dump, and in that, there's something grounding, a reminder of embodiment, of limitation, of being human. So maybe next time you hear the phrase you'll smile, not at the crudeness of it, but at its unintentional wisdom, because to take a dump is to confront a paradox. We're always in the process of becoming and shedding, acquiring and discarding, thinking and forgetting, taking and forgetting, taking and letting go. And maybe the most important question isn't what we hold on to, but what we allow ourselves to release. The universe is expanding. That's not a metaphor. It's a measurable fact. Galaxies are moving away from each other. Space itself, not just the things in it, is stretching. And it's not slowing down. It's speeding up, accelerating, rushing outward. But outward into what? What is the universe expanding into? Take a moment. Sit with the question. Let it hover in your mind, like a balloon drifting toward an invisible ceiling. You've probably seen the analogy before. A balloon, with dots drawn on it. As you inflate the balloon, the dots move farther apart, just like galaxies in space. But notice something strange. The dots aren't flying across the balloon, The balloon's surface is expanding. It's not expanding into the room around it, because in this analogy that space doesn't exist. Just like our universe. It isn't expanding into a void. There's no outside. It is the space. But our minds crave edges. We want to ask, if the universe is getting bigger, what's it getting bigger in? What's outside the boundary? What's past the edge? But here's the twist. There is no edge. No center. No outside. The universe isn't a sphere, floating in a larger space. It's the fabric itself, the coordinates, the grid. You can't stand outside of it, because outside has no meaning. This is where things get slippery. Because we're not just talking about objects expanding, we're talking about space expanding. Imagine two galaxies, billions of light years apart. They're not flying away from each other, like ships through an ocean. The ocean itself is stretching. There's more space between them than there was yesterday. No force pushing, no wind. Just more space, more emptiness, filling with itself. And it's not just emptiness, it's dynamic. Dark energy, that strange invisible pressure, is thought to drive this expansion, a kind of anti-gravity, not pulling things in, but pushing space apart. But where does it come from? What is it? And why is it growing? We don't know. And that uncertainty, that blank page beyond the equations, invites a question almost too big to answer. Expanding into what? Some cosmologists say this question is flawed, that it comes from thinking in 3 dimensions, inside and outside, up and down, but the universe might not work that way. If space and time are curved, then the universe could be finite in size, but without edges, like the surface of a sphere. You could travel in a straight line forever, and end up back where you started. But again, this surface isn't in space. It is space. There is nowhere for it to go. It simply becomes more. Others imagine multiverses, bubble universes, each one its own expanding cosmos, drifting in some higher dimensional space we'll never touch or see. In that model, maybe our universe is expanding into something larger, but something we're forever cut off from. No messages can travel between bubbles, no telescope can peer across the membrane, just silent drift, in an infinite cosmic foam. And still, we wonder. And then the spiritual lens. If the universe is expanding, what is it expanding toward? Is it becoming? Is it reaching? Is the cosmos stretching not just in size, but in complexity, in awareness? Some mystics say the universe is a mind awakening to itself, that every atom, every star, every thought, is part of a single unfolding, and the expansion isn't into space, but into consciousness. Or maybe the expansion is a metaphor too. Maybe it reflects something in us. We grow, we learn, we reach, we ask questions that don't fit into neat boxes. We chase understanding, even when the answers slide into mist. Our curiosity is its own kind of expansion. We stretch toward the edge of what we know, and find that the edge keeps moving. So what is the universe expanding into? Maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the question is the space, the mystery itself, not what fills the void, but what gives the void meaning. Let's play with an idea. What does it mean to have nothing? Picture an empty box. No objects, no air, no light, just nothing. Now ask yourself, can you have less than that? Can something be less than nothing? It sounds absurd, but the more you sit with it, the more the question opens like a trapdoor beneath thought itself. In math, we're taught that numbers stretch in 2 directions. You have positive numbers, 1, 2, 3, and their opposites, negative numbers, 1, 2, 3, simple, right? But then someone asks, wait, how can you have 3 apples? How can you own negative things? You can't hold 3 apples in your hand, but maybe you owe 3 apples. You don't have them, but you're in a state of less than nothing, a kind of debt, an absence that reaches below 0. That's where less than nothing begins. Not just emptiness, but a burden of emptiness, a hole you're in, not just a lack, but a cost attached to that lack. And this isn't just math, it's emotion, it's energy, it's life. Ever feel so tired that sleep doesn't even help? Ever feel so alone that even your memories feel distant? Ever feel so hopeless that the absence becomes its own weight? That's less than nothing. In physics we think of a vacuum, a perfect emptiness, no particles, no light, no radiation, but even that emptiness isn't truly empty. At the quantum level, particles are constantly flickering in and out of existence. Virtual particles, antiparticles, they borrow energy from the vacuum, exist for a blink, then vanish. So even nothing has structure, fluctuations, potential, which means the nothing we imagine doesn't really exist. And some physicists speculate that our entire universe may have sprung from less than nothing, a quantum fluctuation in a field of negative energy, a ripple in zero, an entire cosmos from below the line. In philosophy, this idea stretches into the void itself. Existentialist thinkers like Sartre and Heidegger explored nothingness as a fundamental part of being. Sartre argued that we don't just exist in the world, we're also aware of our own non-being. We define ourselves not just by what we are, but by what we lack, our hopes, our regrets, our failures. These aren't just blanks, they shape us. We live in the presence of absence, and sometimes that absence feels more real than anything solid. There's something eerily beautiful about this. That absence can be felt. That something missing can take up space. You lose a person, a dream, a belief, and in that loss, you don't just feel emptiness, you feel a weight, a shape in the negative, a scar that proves it was once there. Artists know this. In visual art, negative space defines the form. What isn't drawn makes what is drawn come alive. In music, silence is everything. The pause, the space between notes, the breath before the drop. In writing, what's not said is sometimes louder than what is. So maybe less than nothing isn't meaningless. Maybe it's potential. The stage before becoming, the inhale before the word, the darkness that lets the stars be seen. But this idea also raises darker questions. Can a person feel like they're worth less than nothing? A self-image so fractured it becomes a kind of anti-identity, not neutral, not invisible, but negatively defined. Defined by shame, by debt, by rejection. This is where philosophy meets psychology, where existential dread isn't just a thought experiment, but a lived experience. And yet even here, there's a spark, because even to feel less than nothing means you still exist, still aware, still conscious, still capable of naming the void. And maybe that awareness is the beginning of becoming. So, what is less than nothing? A paradox, a mathematical trick, a philosophical wound, a spiritual doorway. It's the space before creation, the silence before understanding, the zero below zero. And maybe it's not something to fear, because every story begins in the dark. You've seen the words before, maybe on a cereal box, a shampoo bottle, a gadget you didn't know you needed. New and improved. It's a phrase so common, we rarely question it. But, slow down, pause with it. New and improved. How can something be both? If it's new, it's never existed before. But if it's improved, then it must be a version of something that came before. You can't improve something that doesn't already exist, and you can't call something new if it's just a better copy of the old. So, which is it? This phrase, casual, commercial, disposable, is actually a quiet paradox. Let's break it open. New means rupture. It means origin, a clean beginning, something you've never seen before. Improved means continuity, refinement, the next step in a lineage. So when we say new and improved, we're trying to have both at once, revolution and evolution, a total change, but familiar enough to trust. It's like being told your favorite band has a new sound, but it still sounds like them, or that your favorite food now has a bold new flavor that's still just like you remember. This paradox lives beyond the supermarket. Think about you. Are you new or improved? Each year, you change. Your thoughts evolve. Your preferences shift. You're not who you were 5 years ago, or 5 months ago, maybe not even 5 minutes ago. And yet, you still call yourself you. You don't rebrand. You don't get a new name or UPC code. You're an improved version of yourself. still carrying the same label. But sometimes, you make a sharp turn. You end a chapter, start a new one, a breakup, a move, a crisis, and suddenly, you feel new, like a reboot, like a product relaunch with better features. So which is it? Are you new, or improved? Maybe you're both. This tension between old and new is everywhere in our culture. We chase the future, but crave the past. We want progress, but we want it wrapped in nostalgia. Streaming services recommend shows based on what you already like. Phones are redesigned every year, but always resemble the old one, just thinner, brighter, faster. Even revolutions need familiarity. Too much change, we panic. Too little, we get bored. So new and improved becomes more than a phrase. It becomes a promise, a way to reassure the part of you that wants safety, while exciting the part of you that craves risk. But here's where it gets deeper. This phrase reflects a kind of existential tension between identity and change. Who are you, if you're always becoming? If you're constantly improving, refining, adjusting, at what point are you no longer the person you started as? If every day, you add or subtract some part of yourself, new values, new scars, new dreams, do you remain the same, or do you become something entirely new? Are we just a rolling patch update? Version 2.0, 2.1, 2.1.1 question mark? Or are we shapeshifters wearing the same name across lifetimes? In philosophy, this gets at the heart of identity over time. If a thing changes, how much can it change before it's no longer that thing? We saw this with the broom, with the ship of Theseus. But here, it's not just about the object, it's about value. We're told that new is better, we're told that improved is better, but, better than what? Are we always climbing, or just circling? Some spiritual traditions offer a different view. In Zen, the idea of beginner's mind means approaching each moment as if it were completely new, empty of assumptions, open to wonder. But that doesn't mean you abandon what you've learned. It means you carry it lightly. You improve, not by stacking more, but by letting go. In this way, new and improved becomes a mindset, not a product slogan, not a contradiction, but a process. A rhythm of being that says, I can carry my past, and still step into the unknown. So next time you see those words, new and improved, don't roll your eyes. See them for what they really are. A paradox, a mirror, a quiet koan. And maybe ask yourself, what part of me am I trying to leave behind? And what part am I trying to bring forward? Maybe the answer is both. You're not just one thing. You're an unfolding, a remix of memory and possibility. You are always new, and always improving. Even now, even here. Imagine a place that's nowhere. You can't find it on a map. You can't walk there. You can't even point to it. And now, imagine a place that's everywhere. Not in one location, but somehow present in all. What happens when both of those are the same place? Welcome to the paradox. Nowhere, everywhere. Let's begin with a simple question. Where are you? You might say, I'm in my room. Or, I'm in this city. But zoom out. Are you in the Earth? The solar system? The universe? Yes. But you're also just in your own mind. The center of your awareness. Now ask, where is your mind? Not your brain. Your mind, your thoughts, memories, emotions, identity. Where do those live? You can't point to them, you can't touch them, but you experience them constantly. They are everywhere you go, and yet, you can't find them anywhere. Nowhere, everywhere. This is the paradox of non-locality, a concept that lives in both philosophy and physics. In quantum mechanics, for instance, particles can become entangled. Two particles, light years apart, can influence each other instantly, as if they are connected by something that doesn't exist in space, something that is not here or there, but everywhere. It breaks our idea of place, of cause and effect, of distance, and we're left wondering, if the fabric of reality can stretch across space with no visible link, where exactly is anything? You felt this before, when you think of someone far away, and feel as if they're suddenly with you, or when a smell from childhood pulls your entire mind back to a room that no longer exists. Suddenly, you're there, even though there is nowhere, even though that place is gone, but it's not. It's everywhere, because it lives inside you. This is the strange elasticity of consciousness. It doesn't obey the rules of location. It slips past time. It bends space. You remember something, and in a way, you re-enter it. Nowhere. Everywhere. Let's explore this idea through language. When we say someone is lost in thought, what do we mean? They haven't moved. Their body's still here, but they're not here. They're somewhere else. A memory, a fear, a possibility, and yet, that somewhere has no coordinates. You can't Google map a dream. You can't mail a letter to a feeling. Our most vivid experiences exist outside of place, and yet, they shape every place we inhabit. Your grief walks with you. Your hopes tint the light of every room. Even when they're nowhere, they are, somehow everywhere. This paradox shows up in spirituality too. In many traditions, the divine isn't thought of as a person in a place, but as something that transcends place, an energy, a consciousness, a presence that exists in all things, but belongs to no single one. Some call it God, some call it the Tao, some call it the Source, and some simply say, it is, nowhere, everywhere. But there's a quieter version of this paradox, one that's closer to home. Think of loneliness. You can be in a crowd, surrounded by people, and still feel nowhere, and at other times, you can be completely alone, but thinking of someone you love, and feel connected to everything, nowhere, everywhere. Loneliness isn't about geography, it's about meaning. Connection doesn't need space, it needs presence, and sometimes, presence is the opposite of place. There's one more way to see this paradox. Look at the night sky. The stars you see may no longer exist. They're so far away that their light has taken thousands, sometimes millions of years to reach your eyes. So what you're seeing isn't there now. You're seeing the past, flickering in the present, a moment that is long gone, and yet still here. The light is nowhere, and yet, it's everywhere. Right now, it's touching your face. So what do we do with this? Maybe it's a reminder that our sense of location is just a helpful illusion. That meaning isn't tied to coordinates. That memory, love, imagination, the most powerful forces in your life, don't live in one place. They float, they radiate, they echo. And just because something feels gone, doesn't mean it's not still around you. Maybe not in the world, but as part of you, inside the nowhere, inside the everywhere. There's a strange place in every city. Maybe you've passed by it. A quiet corner, a restaurant that's always empty, a park with no footprints, a road no one drives on anymore. And when you ask someone why they don't go there, they might say, nobody goes there anymore. It's always empty. But, think about that. Nobody goes there, because nobody goes there. A place becomes empty, because it is empty. It's a loop, a reasoning circle, a kind of quiet paradox. And the more you look at it, the more it starts to whisper something deeper. At first it's just a funny phrase, a social quirk, something Yogi Berra might have said with a wink. But underneath it is a strange commentary on how we make decisions, not based on facts but on each other. Nobody goes there, because nobody goes there. It's not about the place, it's about the perception of the place. And once that perception takes hold, it becomes real, self-fulfilling, empty, because it's expected to be. This is a kind of social recursion, a loop in our collective logic. We see the crowd, and assume the value is where the people are. We avoid the silence, because silence must mean something's wrong. We treat popularity as proof, not just in places, but in ideas, in trends, in people. If a book isn't talked about, we assume it's not worth reading. If a person doesn't have followers, we assume they have nothing to say. And so, nobody goes there, because nobody goes there. This kind of reasoning leads to what economists call a coordination problem. If everyone avoids a place because everyone else is avoiding it, then no one breaks the cycle. And yet, paradoxically, if someone did, others might follow. The potential never vanished. It just sat behind a locked door, guarded by groupthink. This happens in culture all the time. Artists die unknown, only to be discovered decades later. Philosophers go unread, until suddenly a generation finds their work and asks, how did we miss this? The answer: nobody went there, because nobody went there. But the paradox runs deeper. It's not just about places, it's about parts of ourselves. Think about your own mind. Are there thoughts, emotions, memories you never visit? Not because you decided not to, but because you've built a quiet rule that says, that part of me is empty. Don't go there. Maybe it's an old dream, a forgotten ambition, a part of your identity you locked away because nobody, not even you, went there anymore. And yet, what if that space still holds something valuable, not in spite of its emptiness, but because of it? In Zen, there's an idea that the most meaningful parts of a cup are not the walls, but the empty space inside. Because that's where the tea goes. Emptiness isn't always a lack. Sometimes it's potential, room to grow, room to return. There's also something haunting here. Because once something is abandoned, a place, an idea, a memory, we begin to forget why. And over time, the reason disappears. All that's left is the rule: don't go there. But if you trace that rule back, you might find there never was a reason, just silence. A silence that turned into fear, a fear that turned into avoidance. And now, a place left untouched for years. Sometimes, healing means going there anyway, opening the gate, walking down the path, looking around, and realizing it's not empty, it's waiting. We all have those rooms, those thoughts, those relationships. Nobody goes there, but maybe you should, even just once, even just in your mind. Not to change anything, not to fix it, just to notice. And in that noticing, maybe you bring something back to life. Maybe that quiet place in you isn't abandoned, just dormant. So next time you hear that strange phrase, nobody goes there anymore, pause and ask yourself, is it empty because it has no value, or because we stopped looking? And if nobody goes there, maybe that's the best reason to be the one who does. Imagine this. You have a broom. You've had it for years. You've swept countless floors with it. It feels like yours. But one day, the bristles wear down, so you replace them. Still your broom. Later, the handle cracks. You replace that too. And one day, you realize, every single part of the broom has been replaced. Not a single original piece remains. Is it still the same broom, or is it something else entirely? This is known as the ship of Theseus paradox, an ancient philosophical question about identity, change, and the illusion of permanence. The broom is just a humble version of the ship, but the question is the same. If you replace something, piece by piece, until nothing original remains, is it still the same object, or has it become something new? And deeper still, what does this say about you? Let's stay with the broom for a moment. What makes something that thing? Is it the materials it's made of, the shape it takes, the continuity of use, the idea of it in your mind? If identity comes from material, then your broom is gone. Its atoms are different now. But if identity comes from purpose, maybe the broom is still a broom, because it's still sweeping. And if identity comes from memory, then maybe it was never the wood or bristles at all. Maybe it's just the story you tell yourself. This broom, my broom, the one that swept that dusty apartment on late nights, when your life was barely holding together, is that story the broom's real shape? Now, turn that same question inward. You are made of cells, billions of them, and every few years, almost every one of them has been replaced. Your bones regenerate, your skin renews, your memories reshape, and yet, you still say I'm me. So, who is you? Think back 10 years. Were you the same person? Legally, sure. Socially, probably. But emotionally, psychologically, biologically, most of you has changed. Your beliefs, your patterns, your body. You've shed so much. And yet, here you are. The broom identity lives inside you. You're not the same parts, but you're the same self. Somehow, So maybe identity isn't in the material, and maybe it isn't in the name, maybe it's in the continuity, the through line, the whisper of memory that connects all versions of you into a single thread. Like a flame passed from candle to candle, the fire is the same, even if the wax changes. Or maybe identity isn't a thread at all, but an illusion, a projection our minds cast so we can navigate the world without crumbling. Because if we admitted how fluid we are, how constantly we shift, how nothing about us is ever fixed, we might lose the very idea of a self. Some thinkers embrace that. In Buddhism, the self is seen as impermanent, a collection of sensations, thoughts and conditions that arise and fall like waves. There is no you behind the mask. The mask is the you, always changing, always dissolving. And yet, we still cling to the broom. We need it to be ours, to mean something. And maybe that's okay. Maybe the broom doesn't have to be fixed to be real. Maybe we are allowed to change completely and still be ourselves. Because identity isn't about having the same handle or bristles. It's about showing up, again and again, sweeping the floor of your life with whatever parts remain. So tonight, if your mind drifts to past versions of yourself, who you were 5 years ago, or last summer, or yesterday, know this: they're all valid. They're all part of the same strange, beautiful broom, worn, replaced, remade, still sweeping, still you. Have you ever noticed how we try to fit massive ideas into tiny containers? 3 letters to capture entire worlds. NASA, DNA, AI. A few compressed sounds to hold a storm of meaning. We abbreviate. We condense. We shrink the infinite into something pocket-sized. It's efficient, but also a little unsettling. Because sometimes what we're shortening is much too big to shrink. Take DNA, for instance. Just 3 letters, but within them hides the full blueprint of life as we know it. Every cell in your body, your eyes, your hands, your heartbeat, traces back to these coded strands. A twisting, silent library, written long before you were born. 3 letters, a billion instructions, and we speak it casually. We've mapped the human genome, we say, as if that means we understand it. But do we? Or are we just labeling the ocean with a paper tag that says water? Or consider AI, artificial intelligence. 2 letters, but behind them, a sprawling future. Machines that think, programs that evolve, minds without consciousness, decisions made by algorithms you can't see, can't question, can't reason with. We say AI, and it sounds clean, neat, manageable. But peel back the abbreviation and you find something stranger, a mirror, reflecting us, our intelligence, our biases, our desires, but warped, multiplied, sped up beyond comprehension. 2 letters, a tidal wave of unknowns. Even time gets abbreviated. BC, AD, moments reduced to initials, centuries compressed into date stamps. The vast unfolding of history, shrunk to digits. You were born in 1993. Your grandmother, in 1947. We mark these years as if they are precise pins on a map, but each one holds a lifetime. Each year, a world of change. We flatten it, because we have to, because language is small, and reality is too big. There's something beautifully tragic about this. It's the same instinct that makes us take photos, to capture a sunset we'll never fully hold, to summarize a memory we can't re-enter, a name, a title, an abbreviation. We reduce, because the full truth won't fit in our mouths. But what happens when we abbreviate ourselves? We do it all the time. I'm just anxious. I'm a failure. I'm fine. Tiny phrases, heavy meanings. We use words like shields to hide behind, to simplify what's too complex to say. But in doing that, we sometimes lose the richness. You aren't just tired. You're carrying the weight of questions with no answers, responsibilities no one sees, and a quiet longing you haven't named yet. I'm okay might mean I'm drowning, but I've taught myself how to smile while doing it. Think of how we label others: immigrant, Gen Z, bummer, atheist, believer. A few syllables to box someone in. It's faster, cleaner, but it's also false. No one fits in 3 letters. or one word, or a sentence. We're all long stories, hiding behind short summaries. Even language itself is an abbreviation. The word tree is not a tree, it's a sound, a symbol, a shortcut. But when you walk through a forest, you know how wrong that shortcut feels. You feel the bark under your hand. You hear the leaves whisper to the wind. You smell the damp earth. No syllable can hold all that. Language is like a finger pointing to the moon. Useful, but not the moon itself. And yet, it's all we have, so we use it, hoping others will see what we mean, or at least feel close. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the beauty isn't in getting it all across, but in trying. A long abbreviation isn't a lie. It's a symbol of longing. Our attempt to touch the infinite with finite tools, to give shape to the unspeakable, to name the mystery, even if it escapes us every time. So next time you hear a few tiny letters, carrying an impossibly large meaning, pause. Consider what's hiding behind them, what's too big to name, but too important to forget. Even in small words, you'll find enormous worlds. Picture this. You're running through a misty forest. The path beneath you bends and curves. You're chasing something, a figure, darting ahead in the fog. You run faster. But no matter how quickly you move, you never get any closer. And then, you begin to notice something strange. The way it moves, its posture, its shape, and it hits you. You're chasing yourself. This is the strange paradox of self-awareness. The moment you try to observe yourself, to catch yourself in the act of being, you create a division, observer and observed. But you're both, a loop, you watching you, thinking about your own thoughts, judging your own judgments. It sounds like clarity, but often, it just becomes a maze, like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. This idea shows up in Eastern philosophy, particularly in Zen Buddhism. They speak of the mind chasing the mind, like a sword trying to cut itself, or a fire trying to burn itself. The more you try to grab hold of yourself, the more it slips through your fingers. Why? Because the self isn't a thing, it's a process, a verb, not a noun. You aren't a solid object sitting quietly behind your eyes. You are motion, change, awareness flowing into itself. Trying to observe that process is like standing in a river and trying to hold water still. This paradox also shows up in neuroscience. We've spent decades scanning the brain, trying to find the seat of consciousness, the place where you live. But there's no single center, no glowing neuron labeled identity, no director in the control room, just endless networks of activity, each influencing the others. The brain isn't a command tower, it's more like a city at night. Lights flickering on and off, systems looping in feedback, and somehow, from all that complexity, you emerge. But where exactly are you? And can you ever truly catch yourself? In psychology, this looping self-awareness can lead to something called metacognition, thinking about thinking. It's what lets us plan, reflect, regret, imagine. But it can also become a trap, overthinking, analysis paralysis, a kind of emotional recursion. You start to think about how you feel, then wonder why you feel that way, then wonder why you're wondering about it. Before long, you're not living your life, you're running simulations of it, chasing the thought of yourself, instead of being yourself. Like a dog chasing its tail under the illusion it's hunting something real. But here's where it gets even stranger. There's a certain kind of freedom in the chase itself, because the fact that you can think about your own thinking means you can change it, redirect it, grow beyond it. You can break the pattern, interrupt the loop. This is where mindfulness comes in, not in the trendy shallow sense, but in the ancient quiet one. Mindfulness doesn't ask you to solve yourself. It simply asks you to notice, to stop chasing, and just witness. Not the self you think you should be, not the story you're building about your life, but the raw experience of now, of being, just this. Try this for a moment. Feel your breath, not as a task, but as an invitation. Inhale, exhale, don't label, Don't evaluate. Just be. And in that stillness, something opens. You're no longer chasing yourself. You're simply home. But we are curious creatures, and the chase always returns. We look inward. We build mirrors. We ask, who am I? Why do I think this way? Where do these thoughts come from? And every answer creates a new question. That's okay. The point isn't to catch yourself. It's to realize there's nothing wrong with running, as long as you know you're the one drawing the path. I'm going to say a sentence, and I want you to think about whether it's true or false. Ready? Here it is. This sentence is false. Take a moment. Is that statement true, or is it false? Well, if it's true, then what it says must be correct, which means the sentence is false. But wait, if the sentence is false, then what it says isn't true, which would mean it's not false. But then it is true. You can feel the loop beginning, can't you? An infinite swing between two impossible answers, like a pendulum that never rests. Welcome to the liar's loop. This ancient paradox goes all the way back to the 4th century BCE, where it appeared in the writings of the Greek philosopher Eubulides. He called it the liar paradox. And it's as simple as it is destructive. I am lying. It's just one sentence. But this one small loop has haunted logic, philosophy, mathematics, and language for thousands of years. Why? Because it breaks the rules we thought we understood. At first glance, it seems like a joke, a brain teaser, something clever, but meaningless. But underneath, it's like a virus inside language itself. In logic, every statement is supposed to be either true or false. No ambiguity, no overlap. That's the foundation of classical logic. But the liar's paradox doesn't fit. It sits in the system, like a glitch. Try to label it true, and it becomes false. Label it false, and it becomes true. And suddenly, you're trapped. A closed circuit, an intellectual Mobius strip, a sentence folding in on itself forever. You might think, well, can't we just call it meaningless and move on? But the problem is, it's not meaningless. You understand what the sentence is saying, perfectly. And that's the danger. It's not gibberish. It's perfectly comprehensible. And yet, it cannot exist within the rules of logic we've built. It's a kind of contradiction with teeth. In the 20th century, this paradox made its way into formal mathematics and computer science, where it did even more damage. In 1931, Kurt Gödel used a version of the liar paradox to prove something extraordinary, that in any system of mathematics complex enough to include basic arithmetic, there will always be statements that are true, but can't be proven within the system. This result is called Gödel's incompleteness theorem, and it all started with a self-referencing sentence, a mathematical liar, a system so complete, it breaks itself. Self-reference is the engine of the liar's loop. The sentence refers to itself, a linguistic snake swallowing its own tail. We see this looping structure everywhere. Ignore this message. Do not obey this sign. Reading this sentence will make you forget it. Each one is a linguistic mirror. It reflects itself endlessly. And if you stare too long, you lose your place in the real. It's like a cognitive optical illusion. And in a strange way, it mirrors something about consciousness itself. You see, your mind is also self-referential. You can think about thinking. You can judge your own judgments. You can doubt your own doubts. This reflexivity, the ability to loop back inward, is what allows you to be aware of being aware. But just like the liar's paradox, this feedback loop can trap you. I shouldn't think this, but now I am thinking it. Does that mean something's wrong with me? And why do I care so much about whether something's wrong? Round and round we go. Anxiety, overthinking, existential dread, they all live in the liar's loop of the mind, caught between competing truths that contradict, cancel, or collapse. So maybe the paradox isn't just about logic. Maybe it's about being human. Maybe the deeper we look into ourselves, the more we find mirrors staring back. Is there a way out? Some logicians say yes, by rejecting the law of the excluded middle. That is, by allowing for statements that are neither true nor false. A kind of third state, undefined, paradoxical, both and neither. But doing that requires building a whole new logic, one that can contain contradiction without collapsing. It's like trying to build a boat that sails upside down, possible, but strange. Others say the only solution is silence. Don't answer the sentence, don't play the game. But is that a solution, or surrender? And here we are again. This sentence is false, still spinning. Good. The point was never to solve it, only to feel it. The friction, the loop, the impossibility that still feels true. Some mysteries don't want to be solved. They want to be sat with. So take a moment. Don't fight the loop. Just listen to it echo and fade. Let's begin with something impossibly close. The present moment. The now. You're in it, right now. But the instant you try to grab it, it slips through your fingers like smoke. Try it. Say to yourself, now. What you just named is already the past. Gone. Irretrievable. Even this sentence is already over. Time seems to flow. We feel it as a stream. And yet, when we try to find its center, its precise location, it vanishes. So, what is now? And does it even exist? In physics, the idea of now is an illusion. There is no single universal present that stretches across the cosmos. Einstein showed us that time is not a constant rhythm ticking away in the background. Instead, it's woven into space itself. Time can stretch, shrink, twist, depending on speed, gravity, and location. That means your now is not the same as mine. Not precisely. If you were on a spaceship traveling near the speed of light, your clock would move slower than mine. What feels like a second to you could be hours to me. Our nows would fall out of sync. So which moment is the real one? There is no privileged frame of reference, no cosmic metronome, only moments, stacked in relative frames of experience. Even the word moment feels strange now, doesn't it? But let's pull back from the cosmos and return to something more intimate. Your consciousness. You feel like you're always in the now, listening, thinking, breathing. But science suggests that even your awareness is delayed. Your brain takes time to process sound, sight, touch, milliseconds, sometimes longer. By the time you experience a moment, it's already over. You are always slightly behind, living in echoes. Neurologists call it the perceptual present, a short window, perhaps 2 or 3 seconds wide, in which your brain stitches together the flow of time into something smooth and comprehensible. But this is not the true present. It's an approximation, a safe illusion, like a film reel moving fast enough to appear continuous. And like all illusions, it starts to unravel the more you stare at it. So what is the present? Is it a point in time, a sensation, a mathematical abstraction? To philosophers, now is maddening. Some, like Augustine, argued that time itself doesn't exist, only the past, which no longer is, and the future, which is not yet. The present, he said, is a knife's edge between the two, infinitely thin, impossible to stand on. And yet somehow, we always do. Others say the present is a construction, a mental scaffolding, your brain smoothing out jagged input into a fluid sense of awareness, a kind of storytelling machine. And that raises another question. If now is something your brain creates, is it possible that time as we experience it is not real? Let's turn inward for a moment. When you meditate or focus on your breath, what you're really doing is returning to the present. But what does that mean? Is the present moment something you find, or something you become? Perhaps it's not a point on a timeline, but a state of mind, a kind of surrender, a giving up of the need to label, control or measure. Time, after all, only flows when we're watching. Maybe the now is not something we chase, but something we rest into, a silence, a stillness beneath thought, that subtle space between the inhale and the exhale, right there. But if the present is so elusive, so untouchable, why do we care about it at all? Because it's all we ever have. The past is memory, the future is imagination, and yet, both feel alive in our minds. We relive old conversations, we rehearse new outcomes, we live in the future to avoid regret, we live in the past to seek meaning, and all the while, the present slips by unnoticed, like a whisper under thunder, What if the greatest paradox of time is that we only understand it once it's gone, that the only true now is the one you never noticed? So take a moment, right now, yes, this very second, let go of needing to define it. Don't try to capture it, just rest in it, let it pass through you. This, right here, might be the closest you'll ever get to touching the present.